2 years ago, I never even touched alcohol markers before. And believe it or not, these were my very first portraits with them. Since then, I've fallen in love with marker portraits, and I've learned a lot along the way. I know alcohol markers can feel intimidating, but I found ways to work through that fear and enjoy the process. Today, I'm working on this Billie Eilish portrait, and I'm so proud of how it turned out, so I'm really excited to take you through my entire process, from sketch to finishing touches. And this is what works for me, so if you approach markers differently, I'd love to hear your tips too. But I always like to start with a good sketch. For the first 30 seconds, you probably won't see much. That's because I'm sketching so lightly. But this is exactly how I start any of my drawings. I wanted to show you anyways, even if it's kind of invisible, because this is what I mean when I say I take it slow. At the beginning, I'm barely making any marks, but that's totally on purpose. When you press your pencil too hard at the beginning, it makes it harder to erase without damaging your paper. In fact, you can actually see here I slipped and I went a bit darker than I wanted to. And even after erasing, you can still kind of see a mark there. That's why I like to keep it light at first. It makes it way easier to erase and fix things without stressing about it. But that's kind of my whole approach to this stage. I erase a bunch, I redraw, I adjust, and I just keep building slowly until the sketch starts to feel right. So whenever I feel more confident about a line, I'll go a bit darker, a little bolder. And eventually, the portrait kind of comes into focus. I didn't always do this though. I used to rush through sketches just to get to the color, because that's the fun part, right? But I've actually learned the hard way that if the sketch isn't solid, the whole portrait will be off later. So now I make myself slow down here. You also might have noticed that I'm using a red erasable color pencil instead of graphite. I've tried starting sketches with so many different things, but for me, a red erasable color pencil works the best. I feel like graphite always smudges into the markers and it muddies up everything, which drives me crazy. But with this red pencil, the lines don't really smear, they sort of blend into the markers. And sometimes you'll even see a little hint of a red line showing through. I actually love that. I feel like it just adds this warmth that makes the portrait feel more alive. Starting with a red pencil even changes how I feel when I'm sketching. Graphite always feels so serious, like every line has to be final. But this red feels lighter somehow, more playful, I don't know. It helps me remind myself that this is not the finished artwork. This is just the beginning. I'm just starting, so this is the foundation. But now that the sketch is almost done, comes the part that always makes me nervous. Moving on to the markers. The thing is, by the time I get here, I've spent so much time and I'm usually so in love with the sketch, and the thought of ruining it is terrible. Like, I've put so much effort into it, and now one wrong move with a marker could mess it all up. So to calm myself down, I make a plan. I look at my reference and pick out the markers I think I'll actually use. That way, I'm not just staring at the whole pack and getting stuck with decision paralysis, but I have a smaller set to choose from. Then I'll narrow it down even more by swatching and blending them on a scrap piece of paper so I can see how they interact with each other and decide which ones I'm actually going to use on this portrait. Now, does it make it less scary? No, not really, but it does make me feel a bit more ready. So once the plan is made, it's time to move on to markers. The thing is, no matter how prepared I feel, that first marker stroke just always feels like I'm jumping out of a plane. It's scary every single time, I don't know. Because I've ruined so many sketches before, but that's part of it. If I don't just dare to make the mark, I'll never move forward. And I know that's a bit dramatic. I mean, I'm not actually jumping off a plane, I'm just making art. And I want to keep reminding myself that art doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be made. Because if I waited until I felt 100% ready, I'd probably never start. Honestly, I don't think any of us ever feels ready. So I remind myself it's okay to mess up, and it's okay if it isn't perfect. The important thing is just daring to put the color down. And maybe you need that reminder too. I feel like a lot of us hold back. We wait until we're good enough, or until we have more time, or until the fear goes away and we magically feel ready. But if we keep waiting for that, we'll be waiting forever. I read somewhere once that feeling ready isn't something you get, it's something you choose. So the only way forward is to make that choice and just start. Even if it's scary, even if you're not sure it will work out, just put the color down. Worst case, you'll learn something for next time. Best case, you surprise yourself. But either way, you moved forward, and for me, that's the real win. You can see I started with a cool light gray. That's because in my reference there are some cold shadows on her face, and I like to lay those down first before going in with the base skin tone. It helps me map out the shapes of the face and it makes the skin feel more dimensional later. I've noticed that one of the coolest things about alcohol markers is how they layer. If you go over the same spot twice with the same marker, you'll get a color that's slightly darker. It's such a simple trick, but it makes a big difference. You can create so much variation with just a few markers, as long as you're patient. I also like to work from big to small. I start with large areas like the base of the face and then gradually adding details, building shadows, saturation, and structure as I go. Because what used to happen to me all the time is I'd get stuck perfecting one tiny area, like one of the eyes, let's say, way too early. And sure, that eye might end up looking really good, but then when you step back, it doesn't even fit with the rest of the face. Maybe it was too dark or too light or even just the wrong size compared to everything else. And at that point, it throws the whole portrait off balance. I've learned that to avoid focusing on the details too quickly, the best thing for me is to squint at my reference to the point where I can barely see my reference because it's so blurry. It might sound silly, but it makes such a big difference for me. When I unfocus my eyes like that, all the details disappear, so I can only focus on the big shapes. Another thing I like to do is to not work on only one area of the face at a time. As you can see, I try to move around the whole face, so I'm not working in just one section for a long time, but I'm working on the whole portrait as a whole as I go. As I'm building these layers, it probably looks calm from where you're watching, and like I know what I'm doing. But inside my mind, it's not that calm. There's always that little voice saying, "Don't mess it up!" And that's just one part of it, because showing up for art can be so hard in so many ways. Sometimes it's fear, like that annoying voice in my head. But a lot of the time, it's something else. It's like I avoid it, like I tell myself I don't even have time for art because my life is so full of responsibilities that art is always the first thing to get pushed aside. I am always the first thing I put on hold. But if I'm really honest with myself, it's not even that I don't have that much time. It's that I don't always choose to give that time to myself. Because something like scrolling on my phone feels easier, but easier doesn't really mean better. I never finish scrolling and feel proud of myself. I never feel rested or energized or connected afterwards. If anything, I feel more drained. Like I just gave my time away for nothing. And I know some people might say, well, scrolling is still giving time to yourself. It's how you rest. But it doesn't feel like rest to me. It doesn't even feel like my own choice most of the time. I just seem to reach for my phone by default without even thinking. And it's different when I do make the choice, when I scroll with intention, like watching a video from a creator I love or looking at art that inspires me. That feels completely different to me. That feels good. But that's not usually what happens. Most of the time, it feels like I'm searching for something I'll never actually find. In those moments, I don't feel like I'm living my own life anymore. I feel like I'm just giving it away, one scroll at a time. And the hardest part is I feel like I do know what I want. I know making art is a calling for me. So why is it so easy to not choose it? Why is it so easy to not choose myself in that way? I don't really have the perfect answer, but I wonder if you've ever felt that too. Because here's the difference for me. When I do choose art, even if it's just half an hour before or after work, I feel it. I feel lighter, proud, like I finally showed up for myself, and that matters. I don't want to just say that art is important to me. I want to show myself it's important. I want to have my own back, and showing up even in small ways is how I try to do that. But the hard part is, I don't always follow through, you know. I say art matters to me, but then I put everything else first, or I waste time on things that don't actually make me happy. And every time I do that, it gets harder to believe myself the next time I say this matters. It feels like I'm breaking a little promise to myself. And I've been thinking, in any good relationship, you build trust by showing up, by listening and caring. So why should my relationship with myself be any different? If I want to trust myself, I have to keep proving that I matter, that what I want is worth protecting. So if you've ever felt like what you love comes last, or that nobody really notices or understands what matters to you, I just want to say I see you and I get it, because I feel that too. But I think it's time we have our own backs. I think we all deserve to put ourselves on the list of people we care for. I feel like I'm so good at showing up for everyone else, and I think I can learn to show up for myself too. Even if it's just a doodle on a scrap piece of paper or 5 minutes before bed, anything. Because every time we do, it's not just about making art. It's about reminding ourselves that our joy matters, that our light matters. That's why I keep coming back here. Definitely not because it's easy, and most certainly not because I'm not tired or never scared, but because I don't want to live a life where I ignore the things that make me feel alive. Right now I'm filling in some big areas. I filled her hair and I also filled her jacket, and even now I'm not stressing too much about the tiny details. Those things will come later, in the finishing touches. When I'm using markers, I think of it as laying down the base, building blends, filling the bigger areas, and just having fun with the color. But markers can only take me so far. They're amazing for smooth big layers, but sometimes the edges feel a bit too soft for me. That's why I like to switch to color pencils. I feel like they're perfect for sharpening things up, like adding texture to the hair or deepening the shadows of the eyes and the eyelashes, or picking out little details that make the portrait come alive. I especially love using them for skin because when I look at my reference, I don't just see skin tone. I see pinks, purples, even greens and blues. And color pencils let me sneak in those hues just enough to help me give the skin more life and dimension without covering everything that I've built with markers. So for me, the two tools aren't really separate. They're like a team. I like to build the foundation with markers and then bring everything together with color pencils afterwards. While making this video, I kept thinking, if I could go back in time and talk to myself 2 years ago, back when I was putting off even trying alcohol markers, I'd probably say the same thing I'm still reminding myself of every day. Choose yourself, even if it's just a few minutes. Think about what makes you feel alive and make space for it. Time is the most expensive thing we have, and I don't want to keep giving it away to everything else and ignoring what actually matters to me. I also don't want to be harsh on myself when I mess up or lose time scrolling, but I do want to hold myself accountable. Because I deserve to live the life I want to live. And in that life, I'm making art, I'm sharing it with you, and hopefully in the process, we're helping and inspiring each other to keep going. So if you've ever felt like you're not good enough or like you'll never get it right, just remember, you only get better by showing up. Don't let your inner critic be the thing that holds you back. I know it's loud sometimes, but you're not just your fears, and you're not just your doubts. There's also that softer voice inside of you. The one that knows what you really care about. That's the part I'm trying to listen to. It's the reason why I keep making art. Because it makes me feel alive. And if you feel the same pull, I hope you give yourself permission to answer to it. Even if it's only for 5 minutes. Because that softer part of you deserves your time. And so do you.